And in college football, this is a big week as it is the college football playoff final, a championship, whatever you want to call it. And I want to touch on just one thing real quick, and that's that last week they had worse television ratings for the playoff semifinal than they did last year, just because they put it on the New Year's Eve. And I do think that they should keep it on New Year's Day, just because everyone's going to be watching it and all that stuff. And that's just kind of a New Year's Day equals football, college football kind of thing. Kind of like how the first weekend in February equals Super Bowl, or the last weekend in January equals Pro Bowl, or something like that. It's just kind of, that day is focused on, or Thanksgiving equals football kind of thing. You just know that day equals that sport, kind of. So I think they should keep it on New Year's Day. But now moving into the college football playoff championship, which is coming up next Monday. That's between Clemson and Alabama. I think I previewed this on my post a little bit, or I previewed it last week. I can't remember. But I do believe that Alabama is going to have an interesting time containing Clemson. I know that Clemson has Tajh Boyd, who's one of the best dual threat quarterbacks currently in the NFL, and NFL and the NCAA, and Alabama took an interesting way of preparing for him. They took their incoming. He's going to be eligible next year, but he enrolled early so he can practice now. I can't remember the name of him, but he's a dual threat quarterback. He throws really well. He's really fast, and they're trying to use him as Deshaun Watson. It's going to be interesting to see what that does for them, how that pays off, I guess. And then it's going to be interesting because Alabama's got a good defense. Saban's known for his defense, not really for his offense. Coker, he played really well in the semifinal game, but that's because Michigan State's a insanely good run-stopping defense, and Alabama knew that. So when they tried to run down the gut with Henry, and they couldn't get anything, they're like, oh, well, Coker's pretty good, let's give it to him. I want to see what he does for, I guess, the second game, his second big game. Does he do that again? Is he going to kind of, I don't want to say choke, but not show up and just be like, oh, yeah, I'm just a game manager. I know what I was doing the last game. We had a good game plan kind of deal. And throw for like 190 and a touchdown or something like that? Or is he going to go 300, 4 touchdowns like he did last time? And then on the Clemson side of the ball, Clemson has Deshaun Watson, like I said. They have a couple playmakers, Mike Williams on the outside. They have a really stout offensive line. Can they do better than what Michigan State did? Hopefully Clemson learns and watches the film. They see that Alabama rushed a bunch on the right side, and that kind of, they moved Deshaun Hand, I think that's his name, Hand to the right, to the outside, and they moved the defensive tackle over to the right hash, to basically between the right guard and the center most of the game, because Michigan State's right side of their line was pretty weak. And I kind of delved into that with my recap of it on last week's podcast. And I do think Clemson, if they get Watson going and being able to carve up that defense, Clemson will win this game. But if they don't, I think Alabama does. It's really dependent on what Watson can do and what Clemson's offense can do. Alabama's defense is going to be good, like usual, but how good are they going to be is the real question here. And like I said, if Watson can start throwing on him and running on him, he's the type of quarterback that gives Alabama questions and kind of hurts Alabama. Like if you remember a couple of years ago, they had, when Texas A&M still had Johnny Manziel, he carved up Alabama's defense. If Clemson takes that kind of thing, that kind of game plan, and watches that film, uses Watson like that, I think they're going to be good, and they're going to be set with that one. And I think Clemson has enough on the other side of the ball. They have some good linebackers and linemen. Shaq Lawson's the best lineman in the NCAA coming into the draft, and I think he's going to try and get pressure on Coker, and he's going to stop Derrick Henry on his side. It's going to be, what can those linebackers in the middle, the middle linebackers and the defensive tackle, what can they do to contain Henry if he runs up the gut? And then what can the corners and safeties do against this kind of decent wide receiver group that Alabama has. It's going to be really interesting to see, and it's going to be one of my games of the week, which I'll talk about here in just a second, just a little bit. And I don't know what Clemson's going to do offensively. Defensively, they're going to do the same thing. Shaq Lawson's going to bring the rush, bring the power. Defensive tackle is going to be able to get some pressure, and their other defensive end's going to get some pressure too. But can their corners and safeties hold up the whole game? Can their linebackers contain Henry and contain Drake? Henry Drake, I think. Drake, this change of pace running back, and he not bust out 50-yard runs or 30-yard runs, kind of big runs again, like he did against Michigan State. And I think that's kind of what Alabama falled back on, is after they figured out Henry wasn't doing anything, they kind of like, oh, let's put Drake in. He's fast. He's going to outrun everyone to the edge. They're not really expecting it. And I think Drake's a little bit better runner just because he's a little bit more agile and faster than Henry is. So that's going to be something to watch there. And then the biggest question for Alabama's offense is, well, I guess Clemson's defense biggest question with Clemson on defense and Alabama on offense is who contains O.J. Howard. He's one of the best tight ends in the league. He's got the power, catching ability, and speed to be another Rob Gronkowski type. So we're going to see what happens there, see who guards him, see how they guard him, and that's going to be kind of a key to the game for Clemson on defense. And yeah, I still think Clemson wins this if they can contain Henry and O.J. Howard. Coker's not really going to be a huge factor, but if they contain O.J. Howard, Coker isn't a factor. So I think Clemson takes it.